Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with the Ron Babich, an advisor with Crush IoT. Ron is a proven business leader with over 25 years experience in designing and executing go-to-market strategies on leading teams and marketing operations, other parts of business and getting things done. So Ron, looking forward to the conversation today. Before we get too far in, just wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on today.
You bet. So I just wanted to start out. I know, of course, you can speak on a number of topics. You've got a lot of experience in the industry, especially in construction, but I think kind of your wheelhouse would be talking about predictability in construction. So more specifically, why should listeners care about predictability, and maybe how can they build predictability into their job sites?
Yeah, well, that's such the $1 million question too, and it's funny because sometimes we joke about, we do all these things and we have all these tools and we have all these measurements and meetings and all this other stuff. And this is, the estimate's important, and our progress is important, and our forecast is important. And then we have all this stuff. And then you think about it, at the end of the day, it's literally to get like one number, which is like, how are we doing right now and what's going to happen next week, so we can kind of plan it out. So the fun is just getting to that one place if you can get there. And to me, I think the most important thing is like having the tools in place, and then having the right things to measure, so that we can actually get to what we just said a second ago, which is predicting what's going to happen potentially tomorrow, and then how we're really doing today based on how we planned it.
So, okay. So what are some of the main areas on a job site that predictability really directly affects?
Yeah, so the two easy ones are the quantity of man hours. So I mean, really, to be honest, it's so funny because it sounds so simple when you say it out loud, but just with those two things, we can put together earned value on just quantity of man hours. But that's all we have against what we thought we were estimating, what we thought we're progressing, and then how we're forecasting. Just those two numbers could tell us like a million things along the way. Unfortunately, though, most companies fall short on the man hours part. Is there, sometimes it's a little late, but have such a hard time with quantity milestones. The other thing I think is probably worth mentioning, and this is a lesson that I was massively ignorant about, and then just had some quick lessons, is that like in capital projects, you have this severe planning stuff that happens, and we have these big estimates, and we have these progress updates all the time, and we have these forecasts. But then you have this other side of it where there's this massive economy built around like the service industry as well. And the concept of like predictability is like really important to those guys, but they're completely absent of this kind of like philosophy of like, oh, how do I know that I need 223 people in the field next week to install cable boxes in Zimbabwe or something like that? And that's what those guys are trying to get a handle on. And really, it's so funny because it's like construction's really figured that part out, at least the theory of it. And I'm not saying everybody practices it perfectly, but at least in theory, everyone attempts to get to that fun place we were talking about. But in the service industry, holy cow, it's one of those zens that there's a huge opportunity for companies to get there. And I'm going to babble for a second, but I think there's a couple areas there that are problematic, and there's some major differences between like those capital projects and service. One of them is just in scheduling alone, because in capital projects we get the luxury of like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months planning and all that, where on-demand services are like next week, 2 days from now, 3 days, so that's drastically different. The other thing is that a highway or a mine will be at a single location, and then you're trying to plan for service all over the place. And now you have regions versus a single location. And that's very difficult, and that's very challenging. And then the last part of it is just basically like crew scheduling. If in a construction perspective, I've got crews that I know are supposed to be at a specific location, and I know the numbers and the et ceteras. But in service, with the on demand and the scheduling being so kind of short duration, 3 day, 5 days, it's much more difficult to figure out what that is. So anyways, some kind of big differences night and day between the capital side of it and the service side of it, you know?
Okay, so yeah, that makes perfect sense. They are very different, of course, different purpose, different focus, different, you're working with completely different animals.
Yeah.
These two types. So to harness that predictability or to better track that labor or that production, what types of tools or what have you seen implemented that has helped companies to get a handle on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Mike. The biggest tool is timeliness. As stupid as that sounds, the biggest tool is timeliness in something like what you guys do with your workforce assets, where I can digitally put something in today versus pencil whipping on a Friday. It's getting the numbers in, number one, getting the numbers right. And like what you guys do makes it much easier to do that, because I can do it now instead of waiting till later when they're inaccurate. But it's just the timeliness of getting the time in. It's funny, before we got on, I just did a Google search on, because timesheet memes just kill me. It's hilarious because there's so many of them. But I swear, in a stack of Bibles, 139 million results on timesheet memes. Like right now, if you Google them, like it's the most hated thing on the planet. So you're like fighting. We were talking about like, oh, it's a timeliness. It can't be that difficult, but it is kind of difficult because people just hate it so much. So you got to make it easy for them to do it, or else they just, want to kill you,
Right. Okay. So timeliness and simplicity, obviously, of a way to capture that data.
Yeah. Yes.
So with your, obviously you have a very diverse background in construction technology. You've been in, large organizations, small organizations, startups, and everything in between. What today, with where we're at in 2020, the year of craziness, no question about it. What surprises you still, or maybe even most, about construction and their adoption of technology today?
It's bizarre. I used to have a slide that we would put up that when you're going to go talk someplace about time, and it's a 1886 timesheet from Jerome, Arizona, in a mine. And I swear to you, when you look at it, you go, "Yeah, that's the one we're using right now." And it's mind blowing. I think the light at the end of the tunnel is that now there's this whole new era of millennials and young people that are coming in. Sound like an old man, don't I? Look at the young people coming, but millennials and young people that are coming in, which are changing that, and they're not afraid of like using that technology. The other thing is that, and this is the biggest surprise I think in the last 2 years, how simple unified communications has been. So that when on voice, like on IoT stuff that we work with all the time, and mobile devices, now if I talk something on voice, something happens on the back end, and then I get this text back, and this whole thing is just, it used to be like, well, now I have a mobile app, now I have this. It doesn't work like that now. It's in the last 18 to 24 months, it's getting really normal for us to kind of do the circle.
So you're actually seeing it get a lot better, improve rapidly.
Absolutely. And people are much less afraid of it. It's completely unscientific on the adoption rate. I mean, we have some numbers and stuff on all that, but the reality is enterprises are really kind of embracing this stuff now more than ever. And we really see a big change like in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we've noticed a lot of the same things too. I know just generally, before we hopped on the call, you were talking about contractors need to really embrace and take ownership of being kind of the hero of the project, being able to predict and know what needs to be where and when, weeks or months ahead of time. How are they able to best do that now? How can they come in and be the superhero that saves the day, like you explained?
Yeah, we talk about unified messaging, but the whole concept of unifying the schedule to the estimate to the forecast is still like the most important thing to be the hero. Because you start segregating those things out and making it disparate, where we have planning that isn't constantly being updated with the schedule, and we have scheduling that's not being constantly updated with our forecast. You take one of those out, and if you're talking big dollar stuff, like it's $1 billion project, you really can be 3 weeks can kill you. So I think the whole concept, which is the basically like the unified tool, unified communications, is probably the most important thing to be the hero in construction.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So with that, I mean, you're talking about assets and kind of forecasting, knowing what's needed when. What about on the time and labor reporting? You talked about the story of the mines in the 1800s. Why is it so hated? What is it why is there such a grind? Why are there 136 million memes about it in your mind?
It's so weird, because when you think about it, I was thinking about that yesterday, like how quick it is to fill out a timesheet. It only takes a few seconds, but it's so bizarre. It's just like expense reports, and nobody likes to do them. They're like, let me do my job. And there's this mental thing. And I'm hoping that maybe when everyone has an RFID tag in their head, that maybe that will be
Yeah.
but I also really like solutions like yours. I hope that at some point it's like, it's okay, it's easy, it doesn't distract me, it actually helps me. I really do believe, because I know a lot of large enterprises, when they start using, but when they start using mobile timekeeping, it really does help reduce the amount of time that worker has to kind of put into timesheets every week. And it's a huge benefit mentally to the organization too, because they don't get frustrated that they have to do an 1886 timesheet.
So in your experience, what have you seen be the difference in companies adopting that type of technology or change and embracing it versus ones that are completely resistant?
I think the two things are speed of use and simplicity. Like if it's not just a no-brainer, if they have to go hunting for the icon, if you open it up and it's got to be like 6 different things, if they lose anything, it's like they want it so simple, because your audience is a mystery out there. We had on one project we were in 24 different countries collecting time on a gajillion set-top box installations every single day, and you have no idea who's using this app or what country they're in, but they all have to do it. It's mandated or they don't get paid. So because you don't know that, and yada, 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 it's like the simplicity of it, it's just got to be like, rock solid. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge,
So I think, and to key in on what you just said there, if they don't do it, they don't get paid. So that sounds like that's a top-down initiative that this is the way you hit the road, Jack, because that kind of the approach that needs to be taken.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think, this is just my opinion, but unfortunately, I think that's the only way it works, because otherwise, if you start being diplomatic about how you manage time, it's going to be a mutiny, and you're going to get 129 million more memes, on top of this.
Yeah, well, and your background, I mean, a lot of it going back is more on the estimating and the project cost management. So obviously there's so many components to what kind of equates to those costs. Time is a big one. It's the largest variable expense in a construction company. You also worked with other industries like mining and oil and gas and other ancillary specialty trades. How is it different there, or is it different, or what are your feelings?
Oh, that's a good question, Mike. That's a really good question. I think it's literally, there's, all of those different segments are like different religions. And even though they're very different, they're very similar. They're they're the same as well too, because mining is almost identical to heavy highway construction in terms of how they want to do things on progress measurement. Same thing with subsea. Subsea is so similar to those two other industries. But on the flip side of that, like when it comes to service, like mass service, where you have thousands of people out in the field every day, it's like that's where kind of things just vary off. But there's this yearning for, like, everybody has that one common thing of, I wish I knew what my workforce looks like 2 weeks from now, And it's so funny, because if you just solve that problem, if you help people solve that problem, because they're doing it in spreadsheets and stupid things now instead of trying to automate it.
So what I'm hearing is better measurement up front, so daily accurate collection of data. And then obviously if you start plugging that in and modeling that with your estimates, now you can predict the future more accurately because you've got an accurate depiction of the current and past. Is that?
Yeah, you don't have to go hardcore on the whole earned value, science, but just getting, like we were talking about, those two core measurements of quantities and man hours, figuring out what that is in your organization, and then as far as what your quantity means to you, and everybody knows what time means. But if you get that quantity part right, then everybody and their brother can make improvements to it. It doesn't matter what industry you're in.
So quantities, you're talking lineal feet of this, yards of that, pieces, parts,
Widgets. Feet, meters, yeah.
Okay. And within different organizations, of course, there's various roles. Okay, so how one person interacts with a technology solution versus how another does. How does a company kind of roll that out and make sure that their training and the understanding of the application is one that serves everybody that has to touch it or is waiting for data from somebody else?
That's a really good question, Mike. That's a really good question. I think, in my opinion, where I've seen the most success is in the biggest organizations, is when not a third party, but when an assigned resource within the organization, that's their only responsibility on that job site or within that project. And typically like a project manager at a Honeywell or yada yada, they might be responsible for that, right? But if you don't do that, if everybody owns it, it's the old saying that nobody owns it.
That's great advice, actually. So again, somebody has got to own that project, and that they're accountable for its success, essentially.
Yeah.
And of course, if the individual's in the field, if their paycheck depends on it, then of course that you've got a lever there that should wield it's a pretty big hammer, right?
That's right.
So with all of this unique background, again, being on so many different sides of construction and the trades, and different software applications, different solutions. I think even going way back, you started in, I believe, CRM, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm 100 years old, but we were literally one of the first CRM solutions in the market, especially in the enterprise market. And in the beginning, we were in the far right-hand corner of the Gartner quadrant, and Salesforce, after a while, kind of blew past us because we didn't realize that we were the only ones on the planet, at the time. But so SalesLogix was acquired by Sage, but at a time we were the like the monsters of the universe back from 97 through like 2001, 2002 for CRM. Which was so much fun and a wild time in software, as at the turn there when money was a different story.
Yeah. I think just because, my use of a CRM and how critical it is in my business today, and looking back when I had my construction hat on and then understanding, even from a construction perspective, how valuable a tool like that really could be. What have you seen today with companies in construction actually utilizing a CRM? Do you see that much still, or has it gone back into that part of the business, the front facing marketing, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. God, that's a really good question. You don't see a lot of what you see, if anything, is resource availability, meaning like who could be on a schedule next week or something in the CRM, and that's like internal. And it's weird because you wind up having like again, I'll just bring up service again because it's the only thing that really ties into the CRM part. But a customer's availability about when they're going to be there and everything else, that's tight. You could see how one day it's just going to be like, no, this one CRM system like Salesforce has it's tied into the schedule as well, and so I can see customers' availability as well as ours. But that's perfect unity if all of it's happening. And I know you guys do a lot of that too with your stuff.
Yeah, it is. The reason I ask, and we've had a few guests that are kind of on that side of things, and some of the topics have been about marketing your construction company, marketing your service, your solution. And I know just in construction historically, we haven't been great at the marketing piece. It's the word of mouth. I remember I had lots of friends in the industry, and people would say, almost like it was a badge of honor, oh, I've never had to market anything. It's all word of mouth. That's all we do. And what I've learned through this other side of the business is, wow, that's a big area that I think companies can capture a lot more opportunity and really grow if they are better at marketing.
God, you're 1,000% right. I mean, you're 1,000%. I honestly, it's funny, and no one's gonna believe me when I say this, but I can't tell you how many literally like a $500,000 annual contract or a 350,000 SaaS contract came through our internet marketing, or came through our digital marketing, or came through. It's like, really, yeah. I mean, obviously, you had to still sell and all the other stuff that goes with it, but man, it's like, and this is for a while now. So it's things like this. I think thought leadership sessions where you got to be not selling essentially, and you're great at that, and you're the master of the trade show high kicks and appearances too. So
Oh
you got
boy.
that going for you.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Too good. Yeah. So back to, I mean,
Yeah.
the reason that I see a correlation here, also kind of a bridge between marketing and then also capturing this kind of data. One thing that I've seen and heard about in the industry, and not just on some of the podcast guests, but they're actually sharing with the market in a marketing sort of way, or in a marketing approach, the types of technology that they use, the way that they're tracking their jobs and their completions and their warranties and their contracts. They're actually using that as a way to say, this is why we're cutting edge. This is why we're better. This is why you want to hire us, because we're going to better track your jobs. We're going to track your money. We're going to track the change orders. We're going to be way more accountable to you than our competitors, because we've embraced technology and it's a core part of our business.
Yeah, it's really smart. And that's kind of, it's not age old, but I would say, like, I don't know, last 12 years or so, it's like, if you want to be successful in this business, show everybody what you do, show everybody what you got. There's no secrets anymore. And there's still some old school people out there who kind of, it's a minority, they'll disagree and go, well, you got to keep certain things back. I'm like, no, the cat's out of the bag on everything now. There's 9 million YouTube videos on every thing, from how to make a squirrel out of a wooden straw. It's so there's no secrets. Get it all out, just like what you just said. Show everybody what you do, how to do it, and then you gain a community, and now you got friends, and you're not selling anymore. You're just providing solutions to people that you know.
Well, and I think this is the same for the construction industry, maybe even more so than software or technology space. But you're investing in a partnership, in a relationship. So if you're going to build my custom home, I'm partnering with you as a contractor to help me to accomplish the project that I have, that my family needs, and that we're planning on investing the next 30 years of our income into, so to speak. So I think just that different approach, along with some of these other things that we're talking about, are kind of some of the low-hanging fruit that companies could better take advantage of. And I know you would agree with this as well,
Yeah.
with your background. So,
Yeah, no, 100%, Mike. It's right. That's right on.
so within you're in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, is that right?
Yes, North Phoenix.
Okay. And kind of a tech hub a little bit, right? I mean, there's a lot of technology and software down in that.
Oh yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, we're trying to make, it's a lot of big stuff. It's just, I'll tell you, so it's a story in itself. But so there's 15 West Valley cities out here when you cross over I-17, and we have less than 2% of all the tech companies. So everything like I've started and we've been a part of is either going to be in the North Scottsdale corridor, or it's going to be in the Central Phoenix corridor. And what we're trying to do is, Microsoft's got like 3 plants out here now. AWS has got one. The White Claw guys just put a manufacturing plant. We've got like 3 free trade zones out here in the West Valley now. So we're making a huge push that's supported by all of the cities, which is super cool, and Maricopa County, which is, the big county out here, to put a tech center right in the center of everything. And I've been very fortunate, been lucky to, I'm leading that charge to get to not only get the center up, but to provide the programming and do the stuff we're talking about like right now. So help companies market. How do I get my product to market? How do I create a marketing plan? How do I create a business plan? How to predict speaking of prediction, like how do I predict how much money I'm going to make if I start doing something tomorrow, all that stuff to help those tech companies. And by doing so, if we do that, kind of create a new tech epicenter central thing out here in the West Valley. So yeah, we started it, it's a nonprofit, and we started that 3 years ago, and it's taken legs, and I can't tell you how excited it makes me about all the support we have for what's going on now.
Wow, oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we're in Utah, and they call it Silicon Slopes instead of Silicon Valley here. So
yeah, you have that. Yeah, you have a cool area there with all those companies.
Yeah, and it's interesting because construction's still booming here and doing really well, very busy. A lot of large companies in the area, and there's a lot of adoption of technology. So it's really long overdue, and exciting to see it. It kind of makes you want to put the hard hat back on and get back out there and implement all this stuff that we've learned from this other side of the business.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool. It's impressive what you guys got up there.
Yeah, there's again, I think the biggest thing, like you mentioned, there's so many youthful technical people that are flooding the marketplace, and I think that's the other thing. And you've probably seen this too. I hear all the time that the trades are struggling to get more young people into their programs. So I think in the future we've got our work cut out for us, and having enough blue collar workers to actually perform the labor that we have.
Yeah, everybody wants to be a gamer and a YouTuber, and yeah.
Well, so in kind of winding up a little bit and wrapping up, I just wanted to kind of ask you one last question. So for you, Ron Babich, is there a hack or some kind of secret sauce that you've learned in your years of experience that's kind of become your superpower, so to speak?
You know what? In my old age, I would say one thing I've gotten better at, I'm still not great at it, is being way more open to change, and also understanding that nothing lasts forever. And when I kind of tell myself all the time that let everything just roll off, everything's going to change, everything does change. It makes me stronger in terms of dealing with things and everything else. So I would say being more flexible, Mike.
Interesting. All right. Open to change and flexibility. That sounds good.
Yes.
Like Pilates, right?
Yes.
Yoga?
Yeah. And you know all about flexibility because you're the master of the splits. As we know, someday I'll get to see that again. But anyways, you've been doing it for a long time. I don't have to tell you about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Ron. Very much enjoyed the conversation today. Appreciate your insights. It's been a lot of fun having you.
Thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure.
You bet.
Take care.
And thank you all for listening to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. We appreciate your listenership. And of course, as always, we hope that you will leave us a rating and review, and 5 stars is the best way to do it. You can also follow us on Instagram at @workmax_. And again, share this episode with your friends and coworkers in order to help them and you to enjoy better life and better business.